got the glasses thing worked out this time with the, I'm looking at my monitor over there. I used to have glare every single time I did a podcast. I think I finally got that worked out. So hopefully it won't be distracting. If I do this, all kinds of glare. Welcome, everybody, to the Talk Radio Podcast. I am excited that you're with us. You can probably hear in my voice that I am sick. I'm way better than I was, but I've been in bed for about 3 weeks, had no intention of doing a podcast, and then the world blew up yesterday, and I am now required, because I'm the one that understands what actually took place yesterday. I cannot believe all of the misinterpretations about what took place yesterday between Zelensky and Trump, but someone needs to come tell you the truth. This particular podcast is called Ukraine, the Zelensky Prophecy, because there was a prophetic word that went out yesterday during that interchange between Trump and Zelensky that everybody missed. And I am personally convinced, and I cannot prove this, that it was a prophetic word from God, like right in the middle of the whole thing, that everybody missed, the Christians and everybody else, most especially the Christians, and certainly Donald Trump. And when you understand this one piece, it changes literally. It's like, you ever been reading scripture and you've read the same thing over and over and you see one little word differently, and all of a sudden the entire piece of scripture takes on a whole new meaning to you. That's what happened yesterday. The hairs on the back of my neck stood up at this one moment, which is why I was telling you I had no intention right now of podcasting. I've been in bed for 3 weeks between bronchitis and fevers and all kinds of stuff. I can even hear it in my own voice now as I'm talking. But history was split yesterday. Not the way Jesus split it, not that big, but it was split yesterday at that moment when that prophetic word came out. And I just want you to know, I am the last person on planet Earth to call anything prophecy, the last. I am very careful with the words "and God said." And I want to be very clear here. I am not saying that God said it, though I think he did. I think he was speaking through Zelensky yesterday. That's my personal belief that I cannot prove. I do know that it was prophetic, though, and I'll explain that here in just a few moments. History changed yesterday. And that's why I had to, like, all right, I got to set the studio up. I gotta go in and I got to do a podcast. It's absolutely critical right now because there's too much stuff floating around right now. I watched as Zelensky was speaking directly to every single Christian. I watched as it was missed, most especially by Trump, as I was saying. And I wanted to make sure, because I'm seeing what's happening with all the memes and everything else. Like the big thing right now is FAFA, F around, find out. I've read multiple posts from very well-meaning Christians that start with "Open your eyes, people. God is working through Donald Trump," and blah, 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 blah. And this is not going to be a bash Trump fest video, just so that you know. This is specifically to help you understand what's really going on in Ukraine. And today I'm going to tell you, because it seems like it's so hard for so many people to determine, and for me it's very easy, exactly what's been going through Donald Trump's mind, exactly why he's been doing things the way he's been doing them, exactly why he set things up the way he set them up. And, excuse me, there's going to be a lot of that today, just so you know. There are some good reasons to do things the way Donald Trump did them in the last couple of days. If you take everything outside of Scripture and just as in the just general world where you're making deals, it's actually pretty smart in one sense, the things that Trump has done. But when you examine them in the light of actual history and the Bible and everything else, it begins to unravel quite a bit. And so this is not going to be you're not going to be able to watch this 9-minute, 5-minute, bite-sized podcast to understand what's going on. Now, it doesn't need to be 4 hours either, but this is going to take a little while to understand what really took place the other day, starting with Zelensky and Putin. I want to be very clear on my position on these two who are both clowns, okay? Putin is a dictator, murderous, rampaging psychopath, all right? He is absolutely needs to be stopped in his tracks. He is a real big problem. Zelensky is an extremely corrupt, very, very, and many times extremely annoying beta male who doesn't know how to lead. Okay, he has moments where he does okay, but we watched as the slush funds went over to the Ukraine. We watched as they got over there, and there's all this sorry, the sickness, all the stories that surfaced subsequent to Biden's slush fund to Ukraine that showed like that a bunch of it was going to the highest level politicians and the oligarchs over there, and it was being misappropriated, misspent, and they can't account for any of it. Zelensky is a very bad person as well. Now, he's not a murderous dictator like Putin, but he is no Sunday school Catholic either, okay? Far from it. He is a very bad guy in many senses, and before this war had started, everybody knew that about him. Everybody knew that he was extremely corrupt. And while it's true that his nation has a law that states that they cannot and will not hold elections during times of war, let's be honest, he was probably very glad that took place so he could stay in power in the simplest of ways without having to get reelected twice. So when Trump called him a dictator, that was ridiculous. And I understand why Trump said it, but and I'll get into the explanation of why he was doing that in just a couple minutes here. But the truth is, he's an extremely corrupt guy. So neither player here is a good player. I am not a Ukraine guy. I am not a Russia guy. I am a truth guy. What is the truth? Where does the truth stand? And how do we get there? How do we get there to the truth? We're not going to get there to the truth through some of these stupid FAFO posts and these things saying, no, you don't understand what's going on. Trump is playing 4D chess here. Let me tell you what happened the other day in the White House. See, here's what happened. Trump went in because he knew that this was going to blah, blah, blah. So J.D. Vance gave him cover, and then he came in. All these things you're reading from people saying, ignore these morons, okay? These people are stupid. Now, if you're on my friends list, and you have posted some of these things, I'm not speaking to you. I understand why these things seem to make sense. I understand why they look like they are things that are accurate and true, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. They're not, okay? What happened yesterday was a monumental shift in world history. Previously, the biggest monumental shift in quite some time was Trump's takeover of the Republican Party. He has moved it vastly to the left, okay? I'm not going to go into that now because I'm not looking to start that controversy during this video. But this is the next major move of Trump to move history in a very, very concerning direction. I'll just say it that way. So let me give you a little bit of history, all right? So Zelensky has traditionally been an extremely bad communicator. So the first bit of history I want to give you is just the last 24 hours of history. I want to frame some things that happened yesterday, and then we'll dive further backwards. Zelensky said that this has been going on since 2014. Well, what did he mean by that? He's talking about cycles, okay? Here's what's been going on in Ukraine since 2014. Now, in his terrible way of communicating, what Zelensky said was very fumbling sort of way. And again, I know that some of this has to do with the fact that he struggles with English, which is understandable. But he also is, even when he's speaking relatively decent English, as he many moments during yesterday's press conference was, he still can't properly communicate. You could see the ideas he's trying to communicate, or he's being very defensive. He's a lot like Trump in some regards. He's easily irritated. You can get his goat very easily. And he gets lost in wanting to defend himself. He has, like Trump, an overdeveloped sense of justice. The two men are actually very similar in many ways, okay? And so if you say things that are clearly incorrect or wrong or whatever else, he gets lost in those. And that's one of Trump's strategies, is to say something that's clearly categorically false and get you just going, no, wait, we got to correct that. And it's just bad leadership on Zelensky's part. He should have known to focus on what was most important. And one of the moments where he did focus on something that was really important was when he tried to say, what type of justice are you talking about, JD? What type, because JD, was it justice or peace or whatever else? What type of agreement are we talking? We've tried this since 2014. We've been doing it over and over and over again through Obama, and then, or I guess was it originally Bush? But anyway, through Obama, through Trump, through Biden, back to Trump again. He goes to the list, but he didn't make clear what he was trying to say. He was trying to talk about cycles. Here's what's basically the cycles he's talking about. Russia initiates, this has been going on since 2014, through multiple presidents. Russia initiates a mini war and takes a little bit of the land from Ukraine. The Americans or somebody steps in and the peace treaty is signed. A little time goes by. The peace treaty is broken. Russia initiates a little mini war and takes some land. The Americans step in. A peace treaty is signed. The Russians, a few years later, break the peace treaty. Mini war has started, take some land. That has been happening. This is the part that this is what Zelensky was trying to communicate yesterday, is that over and over and over, this thing that Trump is proposing has been done over and over and over. This is nothing new. What Zelensky was trying to communicate is, we are okay with what you're doing, but will you please help us understand how this is going to work this time? We don't have a problem achieving the type of peace you want to achieve. We can do that part without you. We can more than likely make a deal with Russia right now, because they know the world is watching, and with the pressure of the world, they'll likely make a deal with us. But then what's going to stop them in a couple of years from breaking it? And more than likely, when Trump leaves office, they will break it again. That is what Zelensky was trying to ask Trump. And he was asking in a respectful way, even though Trump took it all the wrong way. And what you want to understand about, and this is critical, and this is where we reach way back to World War II now. What Zelensky is referencing is something historically that has been called the slow creep. Okay? This is what Hitler did to slowly accumulate power. Now, I understand and I get the concept that Hitler is brought up in every discussion. Oh, you're a Nazi. That's what Hitler would have done. That's the thing the Nazis would have done. You're going to have to decide for yourself whether it's appropriate in this moment when I bring it up, okay? Because I'm not the guy that brings up Hitler and everything. I bring it up when it's appropriate. This is a historical lesson, and we are watching Russia do what Hitler did. This is what happened. This is why Hitler reached the amount of power he needed. This is how he reached the critical mass. This is how Hitler reached the critical mass that he needed to reach to have enough strength to then begin the larger assaults to do what he wanted to do. This is what Russia is doing. And understand something. What's happening here is it's a little bit like Hungry Hippos. You ever played that game with the marbles all floating around, and then a hippo, you reach your hippo up and over and out, and it grabs a marble, and maybe grabs 2 or 3 if you're really, really lucky, right? Okay. That is what Russia is doing. They're grabbing a marble here, and they're grabbing a marble there, and they're grabbing a marble here, and they're grabbing a marble there. And next up after Ukraine is the Baltic states. Next up after that is Poland. I'll show you that in just a moment. You'll understand why I'm telling you the truth. This is the identical, this is the template plan of Hitler. Grab as many marbles as you can, get them into your stable, so when you want Hungry Hippos, you can then play a real game. This is why ceasefires over there don't work. And this is why peace agreements over there don't work. And this is why Zelensky was bringing these questions to Donald Trump yesterday. He wasn't being disrespectful. He was trying to say, we are good with the peace agreements. We'll sign them. We've signed them over and over since 2014. You see the difference in how I'm communicating it and how Zelensky communicated it? Language barrier notwithstanding, I know that was some of the issue. But the difference is you now understand exactly what he was trying to say, and he wasn't doing good at communicating that yesterday. And if he can't communicate it that good, then he needs to hire someone who can and let them be the ambassador to America, because he really dropped the ball yesterday. Now, doesn't excuse Trump either. We're going to talk about both men here. Right now, I'm focusing on Zelensky. Now, the difference, though, is that this was an honest ball drop. He wasn't trying to be arrogant or whatever else. He was trying to say, we are good with it. He even said those words. We'll sign it. We've signed it in the past. But what's going to be different this time? See, what people don't seem to realize is this is Israel and Palestine. It's the same thing in many respects. But the most important respect is in this respect. Just like Israel and Palestine, the goal of one side is peace. The goal of the other side is territory. That's it. This is the exact same thing the Palestinians, not that that's a real state, I'm just doing that for way of reference. It's not a real country, it's not a real state, it's not a real people. But for the simplicity of argument, it's the same thing the Palestinians do. They sign the agreements, they then start a mini war, they try to take more territory, they sign a peace agreement, they start a mini war, and they take more territory. This is Palestine and Israel all over again. And of course, Donald Trump talks about the fact that, well, Putin signed the peace agreement. Of course he did, or is willing to. Of course he did. The peace agreement, if you can even call it that, gives him everything he took. The peace agreement is essentially, hey, you know that big dispute over the land that you just woke up one day and killed a bunch of people and took? babies and children included? Yeah, you can have that. Ukraine's like, excuse us? Why would that be a good deal for us? Ukraine has clearly, based on what Zelensky said yesterday, since made the decision, we'll give them the land. Can we just find a way to make sure that's the last of it, please? So they won't keep taking pieces of our country? So of course, Putin likes this deal. It gives him everything he wants. So the question then becomes, how do we solve this thing in Ukraine? How do we fix the problem? There's only 3 approaches to this. And this is it. These are the only 3 ways. The Biden way, the Trump way, and the right way. So let's talk about the Biden way. This is the simplest one to explain. This is strategy number 1. The Biden way, do nothing or throw money at it, a.k.a. let the world burn way, a.k.a. the catch-all way, a.k.a. anything that's not in the Trump or right way to do it. Any other solution. So any solution, anything, just do something. Doesn't have to work. This is the quintessential and classic, we got to do something. No, you got to do the right thing. So the first way is the Biden way. We saw how effective that way was. That solved a whole bunch of problems, didn't it? Biden saying, we're just going to throw money, there'll never be tanks. We're never going to send any equipment. Never going to, especially not tanks. Okay, we're going to send them a little bit of equipment and a lot more money. Okay, and specifically, we're going to send him tanks. There will never be boots on the ground, though. And then shortly before he leaves office, we might have to put some boots on the ground. I assure you, had Biden stayed in office, he would have put boots on the ground and done that the wrong way. That would have been another Vietnam or worse. That's the first possible way to solve it. The anything catch-all solution. Just do something. We don't have to define what it is or why we're doing it. We don't need any accountability for the money that we're sending. Use that as a slush fund for your oligarchs. That would be fine by us. That way doesn't work. I think we can all agree on that. We need to argue that one. Strategy number 2 is the Trump way. Now, this is the part where I tell you what's been going on in Trump's head since the beginning. Now, what I'm about to tell you, I want to be very clear. This is a very, very good strategy if your only goal is to make everything stop over there for now, okay? This strategy will work, okay? Here's what Trump sat and calculated in his head. He's looking at Russia and he's looking at Ukraine. And he's asking himself one simple question, as any good leader would ask. What compromises will Russia make? What compromises will Ukraine make? And the answer to that question is Ukraine is willing to give up more of their land to sign the peace deal. Russia is willing to do nothing. And you have to understand something. You don't live in Russia. I don't live in Russia. And if you try to evaluate that position of Russia from the perspective of an American and think, well, that's just stupid, and we got to find a way to get them to move, you need to find a few extra brain cells and light them up because you're not thinking clearly. All right? You need to go ahead and reactivate some cells that maybe have turned themselves off. If Putin backs down, it is extremely dangerous for him in Russia. He will be the laughingstock. And I'm talking about if he makes any compromise. I'm not talking about like, just to completely clear this up, I'm not talking about like he should, if he makes like a small compromise or a medium compromise or whatever, if he makes any compromise whatsoever, if Putin draws back a half of an inch and gives them a half of an inch of land back, his people will view him differently. Now, the majority of Russians, a large portion of them are just really good people and would be happy to let this go. But there's a large group of people that want his job, that will see that as weakness and will try and take him out. He cannot be perceived as weak or he will lose his position through murder. They will kill him and take his job from him. He cannot back down. He cannot be perceived as weak. He is not going to make any deal that doesn't give him everything he wants. Period. End of story. There is no negotiating with Putin. There is no changing Putin's mind. There is no working on Putin. There is no negotiating or trying to figure it out or a compromise or a mediation or an arbitration. There is nothing with Putin. Period. End of story. And Trump knows this. Trump knows that if he tries to do something, but listen, Biden knew this, which is what gave us the Biden solution. We know he's not going to compromise, so let's send a bunch of weapons and send a bunch of money and see what happens. Hopefully, maybe we can scare him off. No, you can't. That's why the Biden solution was so bad, because the only way to stop Russia is to destroy them. That's it. That's the only way to do it. Biden was just trying to buy time. Trump, on the other hand, recognizes there is no solution that involves Russia compromising, period. Now, there is a solution that involves Ukraine completely compromising. And he knew that. So, the first thing Trump thought to himself was, I need to put Zelensky in a position where he understands he has zero power, so he'll make this deal quickly. I do not want this to drag on. I am not going to do the normal thing where I go to Russia and they tell me we're not backing down, and then we send envoys to Ukraine and they talk to Zelensky and it's like a mediation where Zelensky gets on his chair and we're not going to do this and blah, 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 blah. Trump's like, I'm not going through that for the next 6 months, 2 years. It's not going to happen. And there's good reason to believe that's exactly what would happen, because up to this point, they have been emboldened by all this money they've been receiving. So Trump made the decision somewhere along the way. He's like, I have to eliminate all the opposition from the guy that's going to have to compromise anyway. I want to short circuit this long diplomatic process that most people go through, to where from here, Zelensky gives very little, to here where he pretty much gives us whatever we want, but we want to get him here right now. So Trump says, how can I do that? So this is what goes through Trump's head. We have to make sure he understands that publicly we're going to be public facing, that we technically still support you, but behind the scenes and also publicly, it's going to look like we don't. It's going to look like we don't have you, which is where the words came from, Zelensky is a dictator. What? Like the whole world was thrown off, and CNN just ran with that, of course. I get it, and I agree. That was a negotiation tactic on Trump's part. It was to demoralize and dehumanize Zelensky. I'm not saying I agree with it. I'm just talking from a tactical perspective. It's a good move tactically to achieve your goal of shrinking that time frame. Okay, so yes, people that are Trump supporters, I see what Trump was trying to do there. And if this was simply about, which is what it is for Trump, I just want to bring an end immediately, it's a good tactic. It's a good strategy. Okay, that's what has been going on in Trump's mind. Knowing these two facts, Putin will not compromise. Zelensky will, explains all of his actions so far. He's like, all right, so then we're going to go to Russia and not even talk to Ukraine. So strategy step number one is we're going to call him a dictator. That begins that process of just grinding him down. Strategy step number two is I'm going to publicly get on an airplane with all the news media with me and go meet with Putin. And we're going to talk to him, not Zelensky. Remember that last week? He goes and flies. He leaves Zelensky out. Zelensky is still on his high horse. I've got it backwards. If I remember correctly now, he flies to Russia first. And Zelensky says, well, there won't be a deal unless I'm involved, which seems, right? So then you see the response of Trump to crush that resistance, to shorten that time frame that says he's a dictator. So now everybody in the world gets lost in talking about he's a dictator, right? A strategy move on Trump's part. Okay, so the question is not whether or not what Trump is doing is going to work. If your goal is to get a peace deal as soon as possible and reach it in the quickest way you can possibly get there, this is going to work. Zelensky is already folding, and he will continue to fold, and he's going to give Trump whatever he wants. That's not in question. That's going to happen. Trump can force the peace here, but it's a short-term peace, and it's a fake peace. Why? And this is the part that Trump is not telling you. And I know he knows this, but I think he doesn't care. I think he thinks he's got bigger fish to fry. Let's get them to a position where they're stable, and then I can move on to other things, and then that's their business. And that is the problem. He's got the wrong goal, because that goal is not reachable. That goal. The immediate fake piece is reachable, but then it becomes their problem? No. It also puts a notch in his belt that he solved Ukraine when Biden couldn't do it for years. Okay? Anybody could have solved it this way. This is not a difficult way to bring this to a resolution. Everybody knows that Ukraine is weak, and they desperately need the world, especially the United States of America. So why won't this work? Because this is the definition of slow creep. It is the peace, in quotes, that Russia wants. To keep what they have gathered so far, move on with life, and have everybody say, okay, he got it done, we move on. and do it again in the future and get some more marbles at another point. It kicks the can. All Trump is doing is kicking the can down the road for the next guy. That's all he's doing. Tyrants use peace agreements as get out of jail cards so they don't have to be accountable for the marbles that they've already stolen. It's the continuation of the slow creep. This entire solution from Trump, I want you to hear what I'm about to tell you. This is important. This entire solution from Trump is literally the rubber stamp of Hitler's slow creep. It allows Russia to keep doing what they're doing. It is and this definition of peace that Trump is giving you, I want to be very, very crystal clear and define this. And if you're a student of history, this is going to probably really piss you off when I say this, if you know this. And if you haven't looked this up, you probably should take a look. This definition of Trump for peace is Chamberlain's peace in our time or peace at all cost solution. It is literally what Chamberlain did that enabled Hitler. America has never been, ever, peace at all costs. America has always been peace through strength. Why? Because peace at all costs is no peace at all. And it has never worked. In all of human history, from the time we first discovered fire to the meeting in the office yesterday, peace at all costs has never, ever worked. So what is the difference between peace at all costs and peace through strength? Peace at all costs are peacekeepers. It keeps the peace at all costs. It says, what do I have to do to short circuit the problem so it doesn't necessarily go away, but it pauses for me so I don't have to worry about it. These are the people, like, for instance, in a relationship who are usually, like, if you have a toxic relationship between a narcissist and an empath, who, by the way, both are incredibly toxic and usually end up in a situation where the narcissist, who ends up being the one that gets the public view, in this case would be Putin, we know they're bad, and we think, well, because of the bad things they did, the empath is the innocent victim. Empaths are as toxic, or can be as toxic as narcissists. It's toxic empathy, or a toxic empath, okay? A toxic empath or a peacekeeper is one who says, what do you want? I'm just going to give it to you so the situation calms down. I'll give you a great example, is parents whose kids go off the friggin' rails, and they're like, well, what do you want? What? Give me my toy. Okay, here. That's a peacekeeper, giving the crazy person what they want so that peace comes back. That is the most selfish form of peacekeeping there has ever been. Dr. Phil even calls these people in relationships that do this the more selfish partner, because he says you lie to yourself that you're doing this for your partner. Well, I gave them what they wanted. No. You gave you what you wanted. What you wanted was the problem to go away, even if it meant you're making the problem worse by winding up further next time. Once they do it, now they know they can do it again and again and again. That is a peacekeeper. They keep peace at all costs. They do it all. Whoever the squeaky wheels say to do, they do it. A peacemaker creates peace. It literally has the word make in it. Jesus did not say, blessed are the peacekeepers. He said, blessed are the peacemakers. And peacemakers achieve peace through strength. And this is where Trump and Biden are similar, because strategy number one, Biden, and strategy number two, Trump, those are peacekeeping strategies. Neither are peace through strength. Trump, what he did yesterday, people are misinterpreting as peace through strength. That is not. That was just acting like a bully at the complete wrong moment. At the moment of prophecy, by the way, which I'm coming to that here in just a moment. This is just, even now, sends chills up my spine. Neither strategy, the Biden strategy or the Trump strategy, is a working strategy. It is not a strategy that will hold. It is not a strategy that's going to solve the problem. It's actually going to make the problem much, much worse. Trump's strategy is not going to help things. He's going to embolden the Russians. America has always been peace through strength. And for the first time in all of American history, Trump just changed America on the world stage in front of God and everybody watching, from peace through strength to peace at all costs. He changed us from peacemakers to peacekeepers. And reminding you again, peace at all costs has always failed. Always. Now, Trump is trying to get Ukraine to accept peace at all costs. That's what he's doing now. Now that's the goal. He's trying to tell Ukraine, accept the deal we've given you. And what Ukraine is trying to point out is they've seen it fail over and over. They've personally witnessed it fail over and over and over since 24. That's all they're trying to say is you're trying to do this with peace through, not doing it with peace through strength. You're trying to do it with peacekeeping. All we're asking you is what he was trying to say to J.D. Vance is, what do you have in place to enforce the deal that you're making? Because if you don't have enforcement, you don't have a boundary. A deal is a boundary. It's this far and no further. And Trump, Trump very, very well understands this, because if you see, once again, we go back and reference what's going on in Gaza and what's going on with Israel. Trump knows this. It's why he's saying we got to level out Gaza and start it all over again. Why? Because he knows that every time he allows the same people back in there, they do the same thing and they screw it all up again. And that's what Zelensky is trying to say to him. He's trying to say they're just going to keep coming. We've never once gotten any ground back from them, and they haven't stopped coming. And every time they say there's a deal, they break it. Trump went off yesterday in that moment. One, I believe, because the word of God hit him the wrong way. Coming out here in strategy 3. And 2, because he knew, and it's why Trump gets very loud when he starts looking like he doesn't know what he's doing. That's typical of a narcissist, okay? They just talk louder, they talk more, they talk faster, they talk over you, they try to humiliate you. That's what Trump did, because in that moment, and Zelensky wasn't even trying to humiliate him. He was just saying, we need a solution for you. You're leaving a back door here. We're just asking you, can you please close? We'll accept the loss of our territory. We'll take our dead and we'll go home and bury them. We'll put them in the ground and we'll mourn them, and we will feel for the rest of our lives cheated by the entire world for letting Russia do this to us and not standing with us. We're just asking you to close the back door. And Trump wouldn't do it. And he knew that the world was going to see Zelensky was telling the truth. He knew there was a back door that had been left open, and he knew Zelensky couldn't properly communicate it, and he used that moment to yell and scream at him to make sure nobody saw what Zelensky was really trying to say. So what does work? Strategy 3. And it's the only strategy that will work. I'm coming to that in just a moment. Yesterday was a divider line in American history. It was a seminal moment. You're watching as Trump transforms America into a peace at all cost type of nation. This is like I said before, the exact strategy that Chamberlain had used. And those of us who try to point this out, those of us who try to explain the things that I'm explaining to you, you're going to hear responses to this video. People are going to say, oh, he's just it's typical TDS. It's just a guy that hates Trump. It's just orange man bad. It's another guy that can't, find his, doesn't know what's good for him, doesn't know his butt from his elbow. It's the other guy doesn't understand that what Trump is doing. So just be quiet. The typical arrogant response of a lot of Trump people is just be quiet and relax and enjoy the benefits. You'll see it's going to work out good. I'm not saying this won't work. It's going to work, and it's going to cause Zelensky to cave. But I want to be clear about why. Before we get to strategy 3, it's because of something I've been saying for a long time that I've always hoped I was wrong about. I have said for many, many, many years, Trump is not a deal maker. He's never been a deal maker. He's never made a deal in his life. There is never, and I'll explain in just a moment, there has never been something in this moment I wanted to be more wrong about Trump than that. I was hoping that the deal maker would come out and I would see that. Secretly, after Trump got elected, there was 2 things I was really hoping for. Number 1 was a complete and total change of what was happening with an abortion with the federal government. I was really hoping that he would defund Planned Parenthood. And I assure you, if Trump defunds Planned Parenthood, the red hat goes on. Okay, you'll see me in a red Trump hat. Okay, he's got it. If he completely defunds them and just gets, now I reserve the right to evaluate what he does. Like a company that gets, $1.5 billion a year from the federal government. If he defunds them by $200 million, no, that's not a defunding. If he completely defunds them, and I evaluate at the time that he really has taken the steps to make sure that they don't receive anything from the feds, you're going to see me in a MAGA hat. That's the one thing, a secret desire I have for Trump to take care of that. The other secret desire I had as we moved into this specific election was he talked all the time about what a deal maker he is, and he'll make a deal, and this never would have happened in Russia if he was president. And that part I do believe. I think that Russia knew that Trump would step in like he's doing right now. Which, by the way, that alone is an example of peace through strength. But the problem is he's not doing it that way. He's doing it in the peace at all costs way. So anyway, the long story short, and I need some water. The long story short is he's not a deal maker, all right? He's never made a deal in his life. He doesn't make deals. This is what Trump actually does. He figures out where he has more power over those that he wants something from, and then he just crushes them, and they have no choice but to make a deal. They have no choice but to take what you've offered them. He takes away your choice. He takes away and he compromises. It's his way or the highway. That's not a deal. That's not a deal maker. That's forced submission. That's servitude. That's close to slavery. You'll do what I say. You'll do it my way. And then he walks out and beats his chest and said, all right, everybody's in agreement. That's how Trump has run his Trump businesses for decades. He has run over orphans and widows, the two classes of people that we are repeatedly instructed in the Bible to protect. He has run over them over and over and over by making corrupt deals with politicians to use eminent domain to take their houses from them. It has happened multiple times. Glenn Beck documented it in a series years ago before he became foolish and started, bowing to Trump. So it's well documented. It's not something I'm going to try and prove here. It's in the Glenn Beck archives. You can find it there if you want to look for it. That's where I found out about it. So the first thing to understand is that Trump is not a deal maker. He is a deal forcer, and there is a difference. Now, he'll get a deal done, but the truth is it's not really a deal. I mean, a deal implies that two sides got something, right? That what they wanted. Ukraine will get nothing out of this. All they got was a bloody war that we helped pay for that got them nothing, no security for the future, and none of their land back now. And of course, none of their dead back. Obviously, you can't do that. So let's now go to strategy 3, the right way, the long-term actual peace strategy. And I want to be very clear that what I'm about to tell you, this is the only strategy that actually works. This is the only strategy on planet Earth that will solve this problem, if not permanently, then as close to permanent as you can get it. This is it. I'm going to give it to you now. Now, I'm not saying you're going to like it, but it's the only way. I want to read to you from a Facebook post from a guy named Brett Laird. I've never seen this guy before. I've never talked to him. I have no idea who he is. I just know that what he's written in this post is accurate to the largest degree that I could authenticate it. And this sets the stage for the correct solution. During my time living and serving as a missionary in Ukraine, I watched each successive Ukrainian president negotiate with Putin and sign a deal. Each time, Putin would use the deal to strengthen his position, then stab Ukraine in the back. I watched successive British, German, Turkish, and French leaders negotiate with Putin and sign a deal. Each time, Putin would use the deal to strengthen his position, then stab Ukraine in the back. Now, in turn, Trump wants to negotiate with Putin and sign yet another deal. The question is whether Putin will or will not use the deal to strengthen his position, then stab Ukraine in the back again. It has been said that insanity is trying the same thing over and over again and expecting a different result. Trump is convinced that this time it will be different. Why? Now, I disagree with him on that point. I think Trump knows it's not going to be different. Simply because he is president again. But the fact is that Putin's treacherous violation of ceasefires and peace agreements occurred during Trump's first term too. On what basis is it, which by the way is why I say Trump knows, on what basis is it reasonable to think that it will be different this time? Does Trump really trust the word of a KGB officer? Or will a Trump peace deal include real security guarantees for Ukrainian civilians and their children? That is the question that the Ukrainian public is asking. And I don't blame them for asking it. It is important for the American public to know that my Ukrainian friends have been hopeful that the transition from a senile and indecisive president to a strong and decisive one will bring a true and just end to the war. They are rooting for Trump in this endeavor, and so am I. No one longs for peace more than those who are burying their loved ones and living under the constant terror of Russian drone and missile attacks. And no one is more grateful for America providing modern weapons than the Ukrainian soldiers who have proven they are willing to defend their families, their homes, and their country with nothing but shovels if need be. But they have watched successive world leaders cut deals with Putin and congratulate themselves for being peacemakers. Then, while those, quote, heroic peacemakers, end quote, were still patting themselves on their own backs, the Ukrainians felt the cold steel of a KGB dictator's knife being plunged into theirs. Ukrainians want peace. Of course they want peace. They want peace the way any victim of violence and brutality longs for peace. But they don't want to give Putin time, money, and materials to rearm and form an even larger invasion force. They understandably believe it is better to keep fighting a weakened, bloodied, and exhausted foe now rather than face a rested, reinforced, and modernized one when Trump's term ends. Whatever your opinions are about these things, please at least try to put yourself in the shoes of common Ukrainians and at least understand where they are coming from. They don't want their president to sign any deal that doesn't contain ironclad security guarantees. And Zelensky cannot agree to something that the Ukrainian parliament and people cannot and will not accept. The Ukrainian position on this is simple. A peace deal with a proven backstabber has to include real protection against his knife. There is only one solution to this. Now, it branches into two possible ways to achieve it. The first is this. We take what Trump has offered, okay? And this is important. And remember that as I read that, the Ukrainians, I've told you multiple times, they're all for peace. They're all for signing it. They just need to know that they're going to be protected and provided for, and provided protection, not food. They'll provide their own food and stuff. But they need to know that they're going to close the back door and take the knife out of the KGB dictator's hands. Do you know the only country in this spat who has proved over and over that they're committed to peace? Ukraine. Do you know the only one that's ever proved it's not interested in peace whatsoever? Russia. Oh, they're more than happy to sign the peace deals. They're more than happy to keep the peace for a couple of years, and then they're more than happy to pick up their knives and guns again and start killing Ukrainians. And of course, as I said before, Russia is interested in this peace deal because they get 100% of what they want. Solution 3 forces Russia to invest in peace for the first time ever. So let's talk about the only way to reach a lasting peace in Ukraine. The first is an offshoot of Trump's deal, and you have to understand that this, what I'm about to say, has to have the bigger thing I'm going to tell you in a moment, the long-term thing, as the backstop if this doesn't work, what I'm about to tell you. What this article was saying, and what I've been telling you since the beginning of this, is that Russia just violates their deals over and over, right? So for Trump's deal to make any sense, he needs to listen to Zelensky's request, which is give us some help to make sure Russia knows that if they open up the beachhead again against us, it's going to be hell to pay for them. They need to know there's going to be punishment for breaking the deal. There must be consequences. Boundaries without enforced consequences are no boundaries at all. A peace deal is a boundary. This far and no further and we're done. If you sign that, but then you start moving forward, what was the purpose of signing it? And that's the part Trump doesn't want to address. He just wants to get it done. He wants to put a notch in his belt, maybe. He wants to get it over with. So it's clear for now. Ukraine is asking the U.S. and others be a part of that deal. They're asking to say, look, we need a backstop here. We need some way for the Russians to know that if they violate it this time, there's going to be hell to pay. So the first piece of this is the USA and other nations must commit to people standing there to stop Russia. And here's why. It is in our best interest. because Russia is going to go to the Baltic states and then Poland, and then they're going to just keep grabbing as many marbles as they can. And when they have enough marbles and they feel that they control enough power and have enough resources, they're going to launch on bigger countries over there, take those over, and then eventually come after us. That is Russia's plan. That is China's plan. That is the plan of any nation that has a dictator in charge of it, because dictators know they're eventually beheaded or deposed, and the only way to stop that from happening is just own the world. That is the plan of these other nations, and they're working together, at the very least, to get rid of us. China and Russia, if they could press a button without hurting themselves to get rid of America, we are the first thing they would get rid of. They know that we're the only ones standing in the way of all those things. This is critical that people understand. That Russia must know they can't grab any more marbles. They must know that if they try to grab a marble, they get the hand cut off. That's what Zelensky is asking for. That's what he's saying is come. He's not saying protect us from every problem in the world, but come and send some troops, send some reinforcements so that we can both defend ourselves and have backup troops if they try to take our land. The land grabs in Ukraine are just the start. It is in our best interest to make sure they cannot grab any more land. Now we get to the backstop, the bigger plan. The better way to handle this, and I would suggest we do this first. And no one's going to like this, but it's the only way. The only way to reach long-term peace is for the world to come together and push back on Russia. That's it. It's the only way to make it happen. President Trump needs to meet with the heads of other massive nations and other massive unions. He needs to sit down with them, and he needs to explain to them that all of us need to put boots on the ground and go into the specific areas in the Ukraine where Russia has taken over and push them out. And if it means it starts World War III, then it means it starts World War III. He needs to convince them that we must do this. He must send Now, here's the thing. The way to avoid World War III is to send an overwhelming amount of troops from nations. We're talking hundreds of thousands, if not millions of troops from nations all around the world to just literally in one day, in 12 hours or less, take those areas that Russia took. From multiple nations working together. So Russia understands, hey, this ain't a war. If you start a war, it ain't just America. You got everybody that you're fighting. Take those back and give them back to the Ukraine. They're theirs. They should stay with Ukraine, okay? And then leave troops there to help monitor the situation and provide support in the future to stop Russia from coming forward. Now, we're not going to be there to stop everybody from trying to hurt Ukraine. We're not saying that Ukraine is special and they have to keep their land. We're talking specifically about Russia taking stuff from Ukraine. And if Russia diverts their attention, well, we can't get Ukraine, we'll start with the Baltic states or Poland. Then the world needs to get together and start helping arm those as well. Yes. We must do that. You have to understand, while we don't want to be the world's policeman and we don't want to be out there fighting every war, we have to know which wars to fight. We have to know which wars, more specifically, to prevent. We must do it in a way that it's overwhelming and in one day gives them back all their land. So yes, am I saying so we just go to World War III if Russia wants to? Yes. Which explained in the prophetic word from Zelensky, which now I'm going to read to you, and I hope you see it, or in this case, hear it with new ears. In the Bible, there's a story of a prophet named Balaam. Now, it has been a while since I read this, so I'm not going to get this exactly right. But essentially what happened was Balaam was, prophesying when God would give him things to prophesy, and a particular king noticed that when Balaam would say good things about nations, they would prosper, and when he would say negative things, they would fall apart, whether it was armies or particular people or whole nations or whatever, or pieces of land. And so he sent his servant and said, go tell him to come to us and prophesy to us and tell us good things so that God will bless us. Again, I'm totally paraphrasing after years of not reading it, but this is the central idea. And Balaam is told by God, you're not going. Okay, so he sends the guy back. The guy goes back to the king, and the king says, why would you go get him? So the guy comes back, and so it's just back and forth for a while until Balaam finally appears in the Bible to convince God to let him go. He wants to go. Because the other king is, I'll give you all kinds of money, blah, blah, blah. So Balaam finally says, okay, I'll go, but I'm not going to give you a prophecy you want. I'm going to say whatever God tells me to tell you. God's finally is like, you can almost hear it in scripture. Fine, go. Fine, just go. So Balaam gets on his donkey and he's riding along. He goes to this area and it's kind of narrowing out. And the donkey just sits down, plops down on his four knees. And Balaam starts getting pissed, right? And so he starts hitting the donkey and hitting the donkey and hitting the donkey. He's just whipping him and beating him. And the donkey turns around and looks up at Balaam and says, how long have I been your donkey? Have I ever disobeyed you before? Now, understand that, and I know this is going to come as a shock, donkeys don't normally talk, right? I know, crazy. Everybody thought they could. God can make a donkey do anything, so it's clearly a divine intervention here. And the donkey begins to speak to Balaam. He says, how long have I been your donkey? Have I ever done this before? I've always obeyed everything you've ever told me to do. Turn around, open your eyes. So in that moment, his eyes were really opened when he looks forward. And he sees right in front of him the angel of God with a fiery sword. And the angel of God says, surely, and remember, if the donkey told him, so the angel told him, it became very clear that had he gone any further, the angel of the Lord was going to kill him. There are many morals that come out of that story. One of them is God can speak even through an ass, okay? So God can speak prophetically through anything. God can speak prophetically through the worst heathens. I believe God can force the devil to speak prophetically if he chose to. I don't think God's going to choose to, but God controls it all, right? So while it's true that a prophet must always get everything right if they say it's in the name of the Lord, anytime a prophet says something is in the name of the Lord and it doesn't happen, they must be right 100% of the time. They don't have to be right when it's something they say God told them, okay? They don't have to be right about everything they say in their life, but they have to be right every single time they say this is a word from the Lord. A prophet is merely someone who speaks on behalf of another. That's all that means, right? So if I ask my son, hey, go tell your friend's mom, we'll see him at the trampoline park, he's my prophet, right? Prophets can be prophesying on behalf of other people, on behalf of God, on behalf of themselves. It can be their own prophet, right? That's what you are every time you talk to someone about your own opinion on something. You're your own prophet. Prophecy is generally understood as something we're predicting the future. But a prophetic word can simply be what somebody else is telling you to say, right? It's the prophecy from now. When it comes from God, it's a holy word. It's a whole different level, obviously, right? So I'm not trying to demean what God is doing is common to what we do. It's very different. And so I take the words God has spoken or God said extremely seriously. I really, really understand the depth of both stupidity and punishment that goes along with trying to speak on behalf of God when he hasn't spoken or when you get it wrong. That's a big, big problem and a big no-no, and God warns very heavily about that in Scripture. So understand that what I'm saying here, I am not saying God spoke to me and told me he was speaking through Zelensky. What I'm saying is when Zelensky said these things, hairs on the back of my neck stood up, and I personally think, but I don't have a confirmation from God, that God was speaking through him. That said, history was definitely prophesying through Zelensky. That's for sure. That's for sure. Because the words he used were historically accurate. So what you have to understand is even after I say things to you like, Zelensky is completely corrupt and blah, 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 God can speak through a donkey. God can speak through anything. You can determine whether it's God or not. What we really need to determine is whether it's accurate or not. That's the most important thing. If it's from God, it's absolutely accurate. But I'm not going to try and convince you that it is. I believe it is, but that's between you and God to decide. The question then becomes, is it accurate? So what did Zelensky say? I'm going to read these words to you that Zelensky said. They're short. It's only 2 sentences. During the war, everybody has problems, even you. 3 sentences. But you have nice ocean. And I'm just reading it exactly because, excuse the discrepancies in English. This is how he said it in his English. During the war, everybody has problems, even you. But you have nice ocean and don't feel now. But you will feel it in the future. I got chills down my back, and the hairs in the back of my neck stood up when he said that. What he's trying to say is the hippo's taken the marbles, and he's going to take more and more of them. And eventually, right now, the ocean seems nice for you, but the ocean is going to shrink if the monster on the other side becomes big enough to cross it. And they're already big enough. They already have the fleets and ships and everything else that they need to cross this ocean to get to us. He's trying to tell us, guys, you're next, right? What's that old thing? I can't remember how it goes exactly. Like, they came for these people and I wasn't one of them, so I didn't say anything. And they came for these people, blah, blah, blah. And then they came for me. He's trying to say that to us. I understand that it's not you today, but it's going to be you. It was at that moment that Trump lost his mind. I'm sitting in my house watching my TV, and I hear those words come out, and I'm like, oh my God, something just changed in the spiritual realm. I could feel it. And that's why, like I said, I think it was very possible God was speaking through him. But like I said, even if he wasn't, it was absolutely history talking, because that is exactly what history teaches. And how many times have many of you said, well, those who are don't learn history are bound to repeat it? We're repeating history. Trump is now Chamberlain. Okay, he's not Churchill, he's Chamberlain. And every Christian missed it, most especially Trump. In fact, Trump, who the prophetic word was given to, enraged by it. This was the big moment when Trump lost his mind in the meeting. Paula White, a known heretic, multi-divorcee who cheated on her husband and sells the word of God for profit and trinkets and everything else, and will sell you healing and whatever else you want. She's okay with Trump. But Zelensky, who brings a solid word, whether from God or not, certainly from history, Zelensky warned us, you got to stop this guy or he's coming for you next. We'll be in the ash heap of history, and all of our people will have been destroyed. And we'll be long gone by the time he gets to you. And my words will be an echo in your ears. And I assure you he's correct about that. It concerns me deeply that Paula White's okay with Trump, but actual prophetic words based on history and possibly from God himself, those words enrage him. Because even if it wasn't God, it was absolutely God's mercy that allowed Trump and all Americans to hear it at the same time, and nay, the world to hear it at the same time. That was the mercy of God letting us hear it. That, I believe, was God, for sure. Even if the words weren't from God, they were common sense. They're accurate with history, and God allowed a national, everybody in the world was watching that meeting yesterday, all over the planet. That was the meeting people were waiting for. And Trump had announced in advance it was going to be public. Normally they don't do it that way. Normally what they do is they have the closed door meeting with the leader first, and then they all come into a room where they all talk, or maybe they're in the room, they don't let the press in, then they let the press in, whatever. They have a closed door meeting first, and then they open door. And then Trump told them from the beginning, we're just going to have an open door meeting. That's not what he did with Putin. Putin, he went and met behind closed doors and then talked to the world after that. But with Zelensky, Trump met with him publicly and told the world, which only increased the viewership. It was God's mercy that the world heard those words. But only those with ears to hear can hear. I want to be clear about something. I said before, so you're saying, Ray, you're okay with World War III coming? Let me explain something to you. It's coming. Russia is bringing it. And if you want to stop it, you're going to have to be willing to engage in some things. And I can tell you, when Trump picked that moment to become enraged, I went oh, you done messed up, Ron. You can't hear God. You can't hear what God's trying to tell you. You can't hear what history is trying to tell you. You can't hear the basic common sense of those who do not learn from history are bound to repeat it. Why can't you hear that? You done messed up, Ron. World War III is coming. Russia is going to bring it. Russia and Iran are going to bring it. Russia, Iran, and China are going to make sure it happens. Russia and Iran, not so much Iran on this one, but Russia and China for sure are just looking for the opportunity. How do we destroy the Americans without destroying ourselves? The economies are all tied together right now. One of the big things they've done, taking a big step in that direction so they can be separate from us, is they're creating their own new world currency, which is why the dollar has so little value this now worldwide. Let me tell you something, and I want you to listen to me very, very clearly. And don't you forget what I'm about to tell you. Russia is going to make the world go to World War III. It is going to happen. When the Spirit speaks, it's a still small voice. I don't know if it was the Spirit yesterday, but it certainly was a small voice with Zelensky, and it tried to come to us. Instead of listening to common sense, Trump went on a Trumper tantrum and berated him. They will keep creeping. Ukraine, and then when they're done with Ukraine, the Baltic states, and then the Baltic states, then Poland. And before you know it, Russia will be in control of massive parts of some of the most important parts of the world. If enough nations gather together right now behind Ukraine, not for the purpose of Ukraine, we're not going to fight all their wars we're not going to go there and, this isn't about helping Ukraine. This is about stopping Russia. Whoever Russia's target is, that's where we need to be. If Russia takes their sights off of Ukraine and puts their sights on Poland or some other place, we need to then refocus our sights there. And then we talk about Poland, not Ukraine. This is not about Ukraine. This is about Russia. If enough nations gather together right now behind Ukraine and push Russia back and move them out, put this fire out, it'll put it out for the foreseeable future. It will crush Putin's presidency and for likely his ability to do this for the rest of his life. Or at the very least, it will make it clear to Putin that if you attempt to do something like this, if you attempt to try and grab more marbles, it's going to be a big problem for you. Not the way that Biden did it with how he just randomly threw billions of dollars at Ukraine. Not that way. That's not going to work. Not the way Trump's doing it now where he gives them whatever they want so that they'll shut up. There's only one way to do this. There's only one language that Putin understands, and that's strength. And America used to speak that language. Biden's solution would have left the war ongoing indefinitely. Trump's solution will last at most 4 years. The solution that's permanent, the only one that will work, is this one. As long as the largest nations get together and make a pact, as long as Trump does what he says he can do, which is make a deal, and specifically pull all these people together and overwhelmingly go in and set it up so that we take the land back for them and push them out. Now, as I said before, we may not have to do the bigger strategy, but it needs to be on the table. Russia needs to at least believe that it's on the table and do the smaller thing that I had mentioned, which is at the very least, if we're not going to go take the land and reclaim it for Ukraine, then what we must do at the very least is go in and prevent him from taking more marbles in the future. We're going to have to put troops on the ground. Now, it needs to be not just be us. It needs to be multiple nations coming together to say, we are in it. We must stop and make Russia believe they need to stop any future invasions, because that's what this is all about. That's what Zelensky was trying to tell Trump yesterday in the office, because let me tell you something. When Russia is done over there, they are big enough and have enough ships, as I was mentioning before, and planes and aircraft carriers that they'll have no problems crossing the waters to get to us. We thought we were safe over here. We've learned twice in the last 100 years that the waters that separate us are not big enough. Pearl Harbor and 9/11. The waters aren't big enough. And if a small nation, relatively speaking, like Japan, could do what they did at Pearl Harbor, and a really tiny factional group like the one led by Osama bin Laden could take down the amount of stuff he took down, what do you think Russia could do to us? I remind you again of the prophetic words of Zelensky. During the war, everybody has problems, even you. But you have nice ocean and don't feel it now. But you will feel it in the future.
Ray Phoenix, America's loose cannon.